Oh, where did she just step out? Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Okay. We'll call to order the workshop of the Brookings City Council for Monday, January 26th at 6:20 p.m. Should I just go ahead and name off who's here, or do we want to?
Do they have a sheet for you to fill out? On the work, a sheet for the workshop that?
Not that I know of.
I think typically we just announce
That's executive session.
who's in attendance.
I thought
So
it was a thing where you check the different people that, I know there is for executives, anyways.
yeah. In attendance, we have our city recorder, Brooklyn, and staff member Tony Barron and Wendy, and then city manager Tim Rennell, Councilor Martin, myself, Mayor Pareda, and Councilor Gelato. And we have 4 members of the community in attendance as well. If council has no objections, we've had a request from staff that we swap items and move number 2 of strengthening Brookings city economy to number 1. Would that be okay? All right, then we'll go ahead and proceed with item number 2, strengthening Brookings community economy and position for tourism growth.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, tonight, Wendy has a couple different hats that we've tasked her with, and one of them is helping me and staff with some of the marketing and tourism things that need to be done. And we'll turn it over to Wendy tonight and let her, she's going to talk to you a little bit about logo and branding, and a little bit about TPC as well, or TPAC, I'm sorry, TPAC. So, Wendy?
Mayor and Council. Councilor Gelato, as you're new, you haven't been in our kind of informal discussions about our current logo. We knew we had a desire to update that. So we kind of went down this path of coming up with some ideas for a new logo. And I've been working closely with Oregon Coast Visitors Association and Travel Southern Oregon Coast over the last year, and trying to gain momentum with Brookings, getting us on the map. We've been underrepresented. I can't think of any other word other than tragically underrepresented. We had a few ideas for a new logo, and I sent out a survey to the tourism professionals that I've been working with, and council and other local representatives to get some feedback on that. And our tourism professionals really asked that we circle back and think on a larger scale of rebranding. And instead of just looking at a logo, thinking about Brookings as a brand, having a cohesive style, and getting a professional company involved with developing a whole package that we can move forward with as a tool that moves us into the future, not just kind of piece by piece. So today, in the background and discussion, we have strong natural assets. We're gaining a lot of momentum. I've done some work on social media. We've gained just tens of thousands of more views just by some reels that I've personally shot and posted. And but that's a start, but that's not enough. So what I'd like you to consider today is professional branding, including branding, brand positioning, messaging, visual identity, and a style guide. It provides the foundation for all tourism and economic development efforts This approach ensures consistency, credibility, long-term value. It's not just a tourism tool, it's an economic development asset. When we think about the future of hotels and lodging investors, they're going to be looking at our community's brand identity. What is our market positioning? They want to see evidence of a coordinated tourism strategy, consistency and quality of our branding, a professional visitor-facing presence, and a long-term commitment to growing our overnight visitation. At this time, Brookings lacks these foundational elements. We have an outdated logo, and it makes it difficult for us to present Brookings as a market-ready location. Professional branding initiative signals that we understand what our target market is, and that our growth is intentional and data-informed, and that public investment is being made to support private investment, that we're serious about elevating our economy, and if we want to attract a reputable hotel chain or high-quality boutique hotel, that could be an investment of $100 million, that we take that first step and show them that we're really committed to a quality brand and attracting visitors to get them here ahead of that. It's one of the first things they're going to be looking for, and we don't have that right now. So I'm proposing that we develop a RFP or an RFQ to hire a professional branding firm to develop a destination brand strategy, including a visual identity and logo, a comprehensive style guide for long-term use, and use this foundation to develop a professional tourism website, again, by hiring a professional firm. We just don't have the in-house capacity to build something like that. And also, as Brooklyn will tell you, there's additional ADA compliance coming. So we need to hire a firm that can do this right from the beginning. And this will also guide our advertising and content creation, supporting visitor growth and our economic development goals. And in the back of the packet here is just an example of Southern Oregon Coast, their brand guide. It can give you an idea of how this works, the tool that it brings, and how the company that worked with Southern Oregon Coast worked with Aqua. So you see that their logo is similar, but it's a little bit different. So developing something that is consistent and identifiable for the future is, in my opinion, in the travel or the tourism professionals that have coached me in this, well worth the investment. And we've got tourism dedicated funding that can only be used for this kind of thing available to us to proceed with this kind of activity. So then further, the TPAC that we're going to reenact could advise on the implementation of the tourism and branding strategy, provide industry and community perspectives, support transparency and accountability, and align local efforts with regional and state tourism partners. Beginning with a professional branding strategy will give the TPAC a clear strategic framework to work within, allowing the community to focus on informed decision-making rather than starting from scratch on brand identity or direction. And also, I asked for feedback from our partners in tourism on the makeup of a TPAC committee, which you'll see listed here. It's fairly close to what we had before, but they wanted to make sure that we did have at least 2 representatives from the lodging or hospitality industry in this mix. So again, the range of costs can vary. I spoke to a professional firm, the one that actually worked on the AQUA and TSOC branding. The initial branding and style guide can range anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000, and then they also recommend a strategic plan. So you know exactly your 1, 2, 3, what are we going to be doing with this, and have some measures to make sure that we're progressing. So that is my spiel on that. Tim, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would like to say I was part of a city, I was assistant city manager in Midwest City, Oklahoma, and we went through this whole exercise there on a total new logo, rebranding, the whole thing, and there was a lot of work involved in that. But I will tell you, it paid off in big dividends because we were able to present, a clear message to drawing folks to our community that was kind of like we have now, no offense, but it's kind of a hodgepodge of things that we've kind of thrown out there to see what works. I think we have, and it is, a pretty decent investment in doing so for creating the logo. We've kind of already got some ideas out there as far as some concepts that we're looking at. And Wendy's did a great job. You guys have kind of seen some of those out there that we've kind of narrowed it down to kind of like what we're looking at. But we need to take it to the next level. And I think by investing, like I said, in this, and also will help once we start building our website and dedicating it to tourism too. That's one of the things I'm really excited about it as well, is partnering with our business owners like Mike and the rest of the folks out here in the lodging and hospitality industry, and really putting the finishing touches on it. Of course, we know, just because you build a website, it doesn't mean they will come. You're going to have to work at it. And those are the type of things that I think, like I said, that, we are working diligently trying to attract, a nice hotel to this community. And I think if we had something clearly put in place to where they knew we were serious about our efforts here within the community, I think that would be helpful. I do think by rebooting the TPAC, that's going to be helpful too, because you have a group of business owners and folks that are tied into the tourism industry that can come in and help us as an advisory committee to make those decisions and bring it to the council for final approval. But I'm excited about this. I think Wendy and I were just talking about it earlier. When you go into a city, whether small, large, and you drive around the community, you can tell pretty quickly how serious they are about, their brand in that community. And we've got examples all over the state. One I was just thinking off the top of my head was Bend. When you go through Bend, you can just tell that they've definitely, that's a big tourist city. We're a big tourist city. That's a driver here in our city as well. But just to have that put in place as to establish the foundation and going forward from there is going to be important, moving forward.
Well, I appreciate this presentation or the staff report. A lot of informative stuff, and I like the strategy. I think for this to be successful, it's extremely important to enact the TPAC or the tourism group and have real stakeholders who know what it's going to take for this to be successful, and get real feedback from them in developing the brand and how is Brookings unique from other places on the coast? How are we different? How are we going to be able to attract people to come here versus other communities? And what kind of businesses do we have to cater to these visitors? What kind of businesses do we need to develop? but something that comes from the stakeholder group instead of force feeding to the community what our vision or what government's vision of a tourist strategy is. I think it needs to be developed, a grassroots effort from the tourist community and the business community of what they see, and they need to have a seat at the table, and they need to be taken seriously in coming up with a strategy.
Sure.
Because I've seen other times where we get these groups, but we either don't listen to them. An example, the port strategic plan. The Port of Brookings spends $25,000 to write a strategitic plan. They have a stakeholder group where basically they write some stuff down, but it's a template that they use for every port in Oregon, and it's just a waste of money for the community, for the local government, and it hasn't accomplished anything.
Sure.
So real input from the community, and empowering the TPAC group, and getting citizens and business owners that are involved and dependent on tourists, and I think we need a driver strategy from that.
I agree, and I think, Councilor Martin, to your point, what we don't want to do is develop some really nice material and then put it on a shelf somewhere and go, remember when we had, our TPAC and we developed a nice brand and a logo and everything, and whatever happened to that? And I've seen that happen with other organizations that you said just earlier, where they'll hire a consultant, come in and do all the work and then just shelve it. But no, it has to be put in place in order for it to work. And being engaged with our business owners and the folks that are in the hospitality industry is going to be crucial for that. So
the request for quote or bid, is that well defined what their scope of work is? We're going to get a new logo, is there advertising strategies?
Sure.
Are there social media strategies? Is it well defined what they are bidding? What are they quoting for?
Well, we'll put together a package in order to send out an RFP or an RFQ, as Wendy had stated, and with well-defined objectives as what we're trying to accomplish here, and I think that's going to be beneficial too. If this council desires, if we take it out for an RFP, RFQ, and bring it back and recommend a firm to award it to, if that's the direction we're going, and go from there. But yeah, that's to be engaged prior to it and sending it out so these firms know what we're talking about. And to Councilor Martin's point, we don't want just some firm coming in here and scratching off Newport and then writing it. I've actually had consultants where I've had to kick it back to them and say, you forgot a few find and replace on your documents because you have the last city that you did this for. Oh, my bad. We don't need that. What we're looking for is going out there and finding somebody that's maybe got some experience working with coastal communities and so forth. So, but yes, that's a great question. Yeah, it's something that once we put that in place, and we do have a mechanism to pay for it through our TLT taxes. And I think, like I said, that's important. That's one of the reasons why we want to get some of these folks with the lodging and the hospitality on the TPAC as well.
Seems to me this is kind of a little bit of a two-piece puzzle of the city government and the city as a whole coming up with branding and presenting our area and the professionalism of us as a city, and that's part of the development piece of this branding strategy. Am I understanding that right? That it isn't only solely about the tourism, but also as us as a city government?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did a little looking on Travel Oregon's website. I did some Google searching, and I found even Cave Junction, but guess who I didn't find at all? Brookings. And I agree with you that we are tragically underrepresented, and in my opinion, we have the best spot on the whole coast with the best weather, and so we are not getting ourselves put out there, and I think I think professional help is something that has been missing from this equation. I think it's important that we get marketing experts that help develop some of the marketing pieces and marketing strategy. Of course, it's going to matter that we have local businesses. Nobody knows better than people who live locally where the restaurants are, where the hidden trails are to visit, all of those pieces. It's really important that local voices are part of the strategies and implementing all that, but I do think there's a piece of it in developing a branding, an identity that needs to be a little bit of a partnership with experts in the field, and hearing from other people who are travel specific and have been working really hard at developing those for other communities, and hearing that this is a piece they see missing, I think is important, because they've shown success for other communities, and we can invite that same success here. So I know that there is money specifically set aside for marketing our area, and I think it's important we get the most bang for the buck to do that.
I agree. And if there's any other questions evolving around the TPAC, I don't know if you guys are just done discussing with the logo and the branding, but I can answer any questions on revitalizing. We just put a short blip in there. Essentially, what I would like to do is reboot the TPAC, very similar to what it was before, except for maybe change up the membership of the TPAC committee a little bit and mix it up a little bit, and start, I believe they were to meet at a minimum quarterly or as needed. So I can see if once we establish this, that there's going to be quite a bit of work toward the beginning of being on this, and then I can see maybe in a couple years, maybe going to a quarterly meeting, but ginning this thing up, we're definitely going to need probably quite a bit of contribution from these folks.
What's the strategy for soliciting applications and forming this
For the TPAC?
advisory committee?
I would lean on assistance from, the council and putting it out there. I wasn't, do you remember, Councilor Martin, how they went out and solicited? Was it council appointees and then?
I wasn't involved with the previous TPAC, but I personally think the previous TPAC was it wasn't the best group. It could have, other people could have served and probably done a better job. I think we need to have a group though that we empower, that we give an advertising budget to and a promotion budget to, and allow them to make decisions. If you look up and down the coast, Coquille, Myrtle Point, Reedsport, just like Brookings, you don't see any promotion for them. Newport, you see billboards on I-5. There's a billboard in downtown Albany. Westport, Washington has billboards and magazine advertising, and those places are really busy. The places that don't advertise or don't do anything, they're ghost towns. Staff has put a ton of thought into how to make this successful, but we need the stakeholders.
Sure.
And I think it's people involved in the tourist industry now in the city of Brookings. People that own restaurants or motels or places that people are going to come to, or locals that want to see the tourist industry successful. Real estate people. Those are that's a huge resource that we have that we can get ideas from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they know there are eyes and ears out in the community anyways, and they know who's looking for the area and who's not, who's worth targeting and who isn't worth targeting.
Sure. And one of the things we added on here too is, making sure we have one person, which we do have some folks that live here that have, some expertise or in tourism and marketing as well. That'd be beneficial to the group as well. So.
Yeah, I appreciated the thoughts and the breakdown of who that advisory committee would include and be represented by. And I think opening up some type of an application process where we could, have those that are genuinely interested in. Yes.
Oh, you ready? I'd just like to offer that, the TPAC committee was codified in section 2.57, so we're going to have to rewrite the ordinance, and what we could do is pull the old ordinance, have it for review at maybe the next workshop, and then move it forward to a council meeting for adoption, because it's adopted by ordinance. It'll actually be in our code. We could look at the structure of the old ordinance and make changes to it.
Yeah, we did that at a couple workshops ago, and I brought that in and showed some slides. I mean, simply, it was, I guess you could say, repealed, that ordinance was, and it was just red line. Everything in there was just red line. So we can definitely.
So within that, it's the committee is appointed by council, very similar to how our Parks and Rec Commission and our Planning Commission is, which is an appointment. So somebody can fill out an application, and if you have 10 applications for 6 positions, you all get to decide collectively on it, what goes on it. So.
And it would need to include these different.
And that would be a criteria for you to evaluate applications if they fit those.
Yeah.
So I'd challenge staff to have that for the next meeting.
Sure.
And I wrote an email to some staff members that we talked about this for 3 years, but we haven't done anything. And it's January right now, we have spring break coming up, and we have our summer tourist season. And we failed big time if this happens again this summer, when we don't have anything going by the time, even by Memorial Day weekend, of having a real strategy in place of how we're going to spend tourism promotion dollars this year. Not just, the same repetitive thing in the budget every year, but actually going out there and having a marketing strategy that works and having input from people in the community. And, I think this needs to be a top priority of staff to get to the council as soon as possible. I know that coming up with a brand and logo is something that we don't want to rush. We want to do it right, but I think we should get our stakeholder group formed as soon as possible.
Sure.
So they can have a say in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the tourism is a real lifeblood for our community, and it's a lifeblood for our businesses, and figuring out ways that we can get more year-round tourism developed, because we're the best spot in the winter to be. So a little bit of wet gear and you're good to go. Yeah. So I really think that's important for the survival of our businesses. So.
No, especially if the money's there to be spent. There's some things you could try and try to figure out how to measure the results of those things. You try to find out what's working and what's not working.
Okay. And again, I appreciate the thorough report today.
Thank you.
Is there anything more on that topic before we move on? Okay, and we'll move on to the policy for system development charges and multi-unit development.
All right, we can get back
Would
to
it be to 45?
45. Mayor, Council, before you tonight, we have some requests and assistance in developing a policy for SDC and multi-unit development exemptions primarily, or maybe deferrals. And we've gone through this last year of going through all these different points and discussing, the importance of updating our SDCs. And in November, the council adopted a resolution enacting the new SDC methodology for the city, for our water, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, and park systems. And at that time, there were some discussions about possible exemptions out there that might be available for workforce housing and multi-unit or multifamily units. And I've got a real quick little PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to get started, and it won't take long just to roll through these. I even brought this so I can see. First of all, incentivizing workforce and multifamily housing, I think, is crucial for us right at this point where we are. I mean, we hear it all the time. Having affordable housing is a bit of a challenge. It's not just a bit of a challenge here. It's a bit of a challenge all over the state, all over the country right now. And trying to close that gap is imperative. And but we're trying to kind of figure out a way to get around that, and or maybe to assist that. You can go to the next slide. And why housing matters right here in Brookings. Well, workforce shortages, it impacts our local services. Housing costs will limit local employment options. Multifamily housing will, in essence, support economic stability. So that if you go out and do just a little bit of research, you can find out that in order for us to thrive like any other community, you know, I believe we had not too long ago a police officer that left because they couldn't afford the housing here anymore because, you know, it's expensive. But we got to figure out a way to do that. And I know, you know, Tony and myself, we've had multiple discussions with South Coast and Lone Ranch, and that's a start. But I think we need to look at, you know, taking it to the next level. And go to the next slide. For those that are watching, what are system development charges? These are the fees on new developments. They help fund water, sewer, streets, and our parks. They can add, you know, thousands of dollars per housing unit. But simply, it's a one-time. It's essentially what a lot of other states where I come from call them impact fees. Because when you're building a house or building a multifamily, you are going to have a direct impact on the infrastructure within that system. We'll go to the next one. The challenges are, you know, SDCs can increase like we said a few moments ago, the cost of building a house. Some workforce housing projects, you know, they just don't pencil in. And as a result, we're having fewer houses built. And if you look at that little chart right there, I don't know if you can see it from there, but essentially the dark blue line is showing the SDC rates, where the aqua line there is, you know, keeping up with just inflation. As you can tell, the SDCs have far exceeded just inflation. And, you know, so what are other cities doing? As I've talked at the one council meeting, or actually, I'm sorry, at a workshop, cities like Portland are doing affordable housing SDC exemptions. Eugene is doing an annual SDC waiver caps. We're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. Lake Oswego, Newburgh, Tigard, Ashland, they're using similar tools. And so there's a couple different ways of perhaps doing this if the council chooses to do so. And, you know, the city of Eugene kind of brags that since they started doing exemptions in 1998, that's helped create more than 1,490 affordable homes because they've given out $6.6 million in exemptions and fee assistance. The next slide. The waivers can help for qualifying workforce housing, applies primarily to multifamily housing development, and also requires an affordability commitment, and we can have some safeguards in that as well. In the next slide, you can do that by income limits. There's formulas for that. You can also record an affordability covenant, which limits the resale of ownership of the units or ties rents to establish income thresholds to maintain the affordability of the units. And let me back up and say, we're not talking about like Section 8 housing or anything like that, where this is not anything like that. A minimum affordability term too. We want these homes and multi-units to last at least a good 20 or 30 years. Repayment if violated. If a developer fails to meet the criteria of the property, if it's sold outside the program guidelines, the developer would be required to repay the exemption. and strict time performance as well. Developers must meet specific construction milestones, and failure to do so can result in a revocation of the waiver and a demand for repayment. So here we go on the next slide with fiscal considerations. Possibly putting an annual cap on waived SDCs. Again, only applies if the project moves forward, and looking at the long-term tax and economic benefits. As we know, multifamily housing reduces fiscal burdens by utilizing our infrastructure. They don't quite put the demand, each unit doesn't quite put the demand as a stick house does. And the benefits to Brookings, the next slide here, it's, more housing for local workers, gives us a little bit more economic resilience and community stability. The benefits of workforce housing, you're going to reduce commute times. Again, it enhances economic stability. We have stronger communities because we have more folks that can afford to live in our community that don't have to live and commute far away to work here. And it also, one of the benefits is it improves job performance because you have employees that don't have to drive as far to come to town and work. So the next slide, the council options, we could possibly approve program framework for multifamily mixed-use development or residential workforce housing that meets our goals and objectives. We can also adjust an affordability threshold. Again, like I said, by having projects that record an affordability covenant or enter to an affordability agreement with the city, they have to remain affordable for a minimum term, usually 20 to 30 years, talking about the multifamily here. And the rents or prices must comply within the income-based affordability standards. The other thing we can do is, if we wanted to, we can establish, like some cities do, establish an annual cap on the annual amount of how much the city would be willing to waive SDCs. Some of them have it on a first-come, first-served basis, or they can be on a competitive basis. Again, and I'm kind of harping on this, but require a repayment. I mean, if we're going to do this, we have to be serious and hold these developers' feet to the fire, and not just, I've seen programs throughout my career, not necessarily SDCs, but where they had great intentions, but they were being misused and misutilized. So our next step is to either, adopt a resolution or maybe do all three of these, develop admin guidelines. And I would also recommend we reach out to some of the developers and get their input on this as well. So the bottom line is, I'd love to see this community kind of grab the bull by the horns and really take a serious look at what we need to do with workforce housing and multifamily housing. And I think possibly some SDC waivers would help us do that, help attract. Tony and I talked about this last week. I think if we go out and put out applications, I don't think we're going to have a ton of people beating our doors down, but I think if we go out and solicit to some developers that want to build within our community and build quality homes, quality, affordable workforce housing, I think that's a start as well. So, Tony, do you have anything else to add?
I would just like to add that just refer you to chapter 17.180 in our current code, which is workforce housing. And a lot of the requirements for affordable housing is laid out in there in terms. What the matrix that is supposed to be there for determining what is affordable and isn't. That's already sort of laid out in there. We have options to finance our SDCs. Those are currently in place now. So there's a lot of stuff that Tim's brought up in the staff report we currently already have. What we don't have is that mechanism to say, hey, you're building a 4-unit or a 6-unit apartment complex. You're requesting a fee waiver on system development charges. We don't have a mechanism to do that. We can direct them to deferrals. We can direct them to, little things like that and to finance the SDCs, but nothing that outright just defer them, like
Exemptions.
exemptions. And I think that's the one thing we're missing. Like, nobody's interested in the others unless there's some character for them. So anyway, that's just wanted to state that.
To make this true workforce housing, we have to worry about if we have like affordable housing that retired people try to come and buy that instead of people that work here. So how do you deal with that? Do you have to make a multi-unit to?
Well, we could make it just for multi-unit, but we could also have thresholds put in place where it's not just, it's going to be workforce housing, not retirement housing. So, and those guidelines can be put within the parameters there. I'm assuming some of these other cities already have that in place because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, the Councilor Martin, they're trying to recruit good workforce housing and not allow the developer to, I don't want to say a bait and switch, but kind of like that. We give them a waiver of so much, let's just say $100,000 in SDCs, and then all of a sudden he starts selling them or leasing them out to, if it's multifamily, strictly retirees. But that's what we have the parameters put in place. So it's going to require more effort from staff and the program itself, but having those assurances in there is paramount to making this work, to actually get actual workforce housing.
So we've officially received a request for some type of waiver. Gentleman is in the audience. His name is Jamie Batty. He submitted an application for a building permit to build a fourplex at Laffer right across from the football field. So he has formally requested that. I've informed him that we don't have a process other than what we have in our code now. And he's here. I don't know if you have any questions for him or if you want to come up and offer any suggestions. I just want to let you know he's here.
I have a few questions then.
Sure.
So why did you choose Brookings instead of another community? Why do you want to build here?
Okay, right here. I mean, I bought the lot about 4 years ago for me, to build for me, to build a fourplex. I live in one, rent out the other 3. That's it. That's the reason. I'm building it now for a client. It's not for ourselves, but I sold the lot to a client way undervalued to make the project work because the SDC credits are so high.
So as somebody who's developing or wants to develop here, so the council understands how does having an incentive of waiving, let's talk about a waiver for SDCCS, the system development fees, how does that make it more realistic that you're going to be able to complete your project?
Well, for this particular project, again, I sacrificed the value of our lot to make it happen. Again, we had the equity in it, so we were able to do so. For future projects, it really comes down to ROI. I mean, if you're going to bring an investor or an investor's going to build a fourplex, it's got to pencil. It has to make sense. In other communities that we're building in Clam Falls, they have another similar situation where it's a cap. Once a year, I get a $50,000 STC credit. Cap, that's it. If I build 50 homes, that's it. I only get $50,000 STC credit regardless of what I build. But it makes a small developer like myself, makes it way more affordable in order to go to that community and build something for someone that makes sense. It's, just for example, what we're building is literally 2,200 square feet. It's 2 bedrooms and 2 1-bedrooms. So, I mean, it's specifically going after, workforce housing, whether it's, teachers moving to the, well, it's attracting teachers potentially because we're right across from high school. But yeah, the STC credits make a project, it can make or break a project simply because whether it's affordable or not. Typically, I usually pencil in anywhere from 7 to 8% of the build costs for STC credits. So if something costs me $500,000, $35,000 to $40,000 for STC credits, our project right now with STC and permit fees is $88,000.
For this four-bedroom, four-unit.
It's for the small 4-unit
Yeah.
project. And that same project to build, again, in Klamath Falls, even if I didn't have this STC credits, would probably be closer to $45,000 to $50,000.
So you're saying that your permitting and STC costs to build here are double what they are in Klamath Falls, which then goes in the end to either the homeowner purchaser or pass down in rent costs to those who are renting those spaces.
That's exactly it. And so if we can get STC credits or a cap or however you guys choose to, and thank you, by the way, I didn't say thank you, council, mayor, and city manager. But if we can get some kind of policy put in place, it would encourage us to build more. I have numerous amounts of clients who love to build here. Just because we know the needs here, it's a gorgeous town. I mean, since I moved to Oregon when I was 13, I'm 51 now, and I mean, Brookings is by far then one of my favorite places to come to. So you're right when you said that you have the best spot. You have the best spot on the coast. So I firmly believe that having this policy in place, you're going to attract more builders. And honestly, sorry, I'm probably taking up way more time than you guys wanted me to. I would be trying to attract not the big developers. I'd be attracting some of the small builders, whether it's local or, I mean, we're from Southern Oregon. Just kind of over the hill, but attracting some of these smaller builders to come over and start building, it's definitely going to help, I think, the overall economy.
Can I ask, what is your company? What is your?
Yeah, it's True Home Building and Development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you, what exactly does that entail? You're a because you're talking about attracting smaller builders. You're someone who's developing and then hiring out, finding contractors to develop those properties, or what does that look like?
We are the contractor.
Okay.
So most of what we're doing, very little development, mostly building.
Okay.
So most of our projects are smaller, single lots, double lots, especially in the smaller communities. We're actually trying to target lots that are already developed, and that way we can just go in and start building.
Okay. I appreciated in the presentation that you brought up talking to builders, because it's something I've often been wondering of, how do we get the cost of homes down in our community for our staff people, attracting new staff people to our area so that we can have quality professionals in our community, but who can afford to actually live in the home in the town where they work. I know that's a real challenge for us, and so I think it's a very important part of the equation to hear directly from those who are building of what can we do. But also to Councilor Martin's point, that's been a big concern for me, is how do we preserve this in a way that it actually goes to the people who work here, not just for retirees to come in and get a cheap home that they can turn around and turn into an Airbnb. Because we know we need that here in our community to fill that need, but we also have a real need for the people who work here to have a home to live in so they can continue and not have to leave.
And the good part of this is we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because there's multiple communities in Oregon that are doing just like that are putting very strict guidelines in there for who these homes are going to be sold or leased to. So
One of the things that I noticed in all of these samples were affordable housing, and I do know there's a specific difference in our state between affordable and workforce. There's different thresholds of income levels, and so I don't know, even in the ordinance that you referred to, Tony, if that's only specifically for the affordable or if it's for workforce.
I think workforce is a general term for workforce housing. Affordable housing
is specific to the type of rent control that's, I'm sorry, that's applied to it. For example, our code section is workforce housing. Within workforce housing, it talks about what's defined as affordable housing.
And price per square foot, is that what, is there a fine line of?
Like I said, the code is loaded with information on and about. I'm just scrolling through here. And by the way, you can't do Airbnbs and multifamily housing in our city. So that's off the table.
And
As far as the age, I think that's considered age discrimination, honestly. I don't know if you can do that, but I think that it clearly says only be rented to individuals or families whose annual net income does not exceed 60% of the area median income as determined by HUD. HUD has a formula that we would use for our area to determine that. There's other criteria here, I guess, again, I know I've directed you guys to this multiple times when we talked about this, but we do have a pretty robust list of requirements that a developer would have to go through in order to get the SDC deferral or the SDC financing. They would have to go through this process with that. So what we're saying now is we're really just adding something into the mix, which is this idea of saying, hey, if you're going to build 4 units, you get this credit. If 6 units, get this credit. 8 units, this credit. We don't have that credit. Now, we do have a density bonus, which is if you build a 4 unit complex, you're going to get charged max on the first, and you're going to get a density bonus for the other 3, which hopefully when we calculated Jamie's, it reduced his price, but it's not enough. It's like the difference between 22,000 and 17,000. And we've seen this in the structure. But when you get a 60 unit apartment complex or a 40 unit apartment complex, that's where it really gets tricky, because those are the ones that get turned away by the fees. There's a huge number up front that you got to come up with.
well, I mean, even in Rainbow Rock and annexing in, and we know that the impact of that, what those SDC costs would be. So I do think the multi-housing piece is a big part of this, but some of these others, like incentivizing what the actual need is, because I think there's a need for multi-housing, but I think also ways that we can build homes at a lower price point for those who work here, but maybe aren't necessarily in the affordable housing income level, but that mid-range of housing where they can't afford the $700,000 home, but they might be able to afford a home that was at a lower price point.
So the other concept here that we talked about for years when we talked about this is there's a trickle-down effect. If you start to build a back inventory of multifamily housing, this mid-range housing will open up, trickle into, if you have people trickling down from mid-range housing into the lower housing, their income levels will drop, retirements, there's all kinds of things that factor in. I have a huge house, I have 4 kids, and I don't even need the house anymore, so I'm looking at possibly downsizing myself. So that's the potential here, is that there's a trickle-down effect. If we can at least get multifamily housing on the market and available, then some of this other housing could open up.
I think it typically mostly goes the other way, but yeah.
But again, if we have inventory, a great inventory, then that might drive the price down.
On the stats that you presented from the city of Eugene over that long period of time, how much they've given, is there anything to show, did they recoup their investment in new property taxes, or is there a way to measure of how that was successful, that it was worth doing that for the city?
I don't have it here with me, but I think they had some data at some point on how they did recoup that. I'm sure, when you put 1,490 more homes into the inventory, the property taxes, especially because they started this program in '98. I mean, some of these homes now, the property taxes, I'm sure, have climbed steadily over the last 20 plus years to do that. But I can certainly look into that.
So on a, like, this specific project we're talking about here, if we had a waiver, the city, we would get, since it's new housing, we would get the sewer payment, the water payment, we'd get the property taxes. What other things can we measure of how we, how we get ROI?
Well, I mean, if you're bringing in folks that are moving here, they're, like I said, they're going to be injecting more money into the local economy, groceries, service industries, entertainment industry, and so forth. We know that's going to trickle down into that too. So, I mean, as far as the local businesses go as well, so.
I think it's also providing a community need and not just, which is something that can't necessarily be measured in dollars, but.
But to your point, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I like the cap concept too, which limits the investment into such a thing, which could be changed later in the future. But,
Sure.
You know, it's a new program for it, so we limit what we're gonna spend on it. Yeah.
And what does the city have available to make, like, if we were going to consider a proposal like this, what kind of money does the city have to work with on this? Do we have, this seems to me that, I support this type of program, but can we financially do it?
I did talk to Lou, our finance director, and she assured me we have money socked away in a couple different places to where we can pull down from it in order to make, to do a pilot program as we can put out there. But so, I mean, yeah, I think we have, Tony, we met with her once about that as well. Then we have money in we have
Yeah, I
some
don't
other
know. We don't like
funds.
to call them those funds anymore. But yes, we specifically stated that we were going to pull that money into the general fund with the intent that we would use it to encourage multifamily housing.
I think,
So we do have the funds sitting there.
The SDCs essentially cover the hard costs to the city to put in the infrastructure needs when a home goes in, correct?
It's sort of a payback, yeah. And invest in future upgrades. Maintenance, down the road, yeah.
Just to make sure that we can pay those.
Upgrades, not maintenance, upgrades, because,
Okay.
again, we talked about this. We're upsizing a sewer line from an 8-inch to a 12-inch. Well, that additional 4 inches is what we can pay with SDCs, because it's
An increase.
Increase, yeah.
And does any of this fall within the purpose or goal of the Urban Renewal Agency?
This isn't tied to the Urban Renewal Agency.
But is there, can the Urban Renewal Agency be involved in this type of program at all? Is that, can we use those funds in any way to do something like this?
I don't know. I don't think we've ever talked about that. There's not a lot of residential upstarts within the Urban Renewal District. I'll just state that. If you look at the map, it's not robust enough to offer that. A lot of the developable area that is out there for multifamily housing, I don't believe it falls within the urban renewal. Not all of it.
And an example would be the bakery. That's the laundromat turning into a bakery, which that is in the Urban Renewal.
Yeah, and he got facade improvement and program money, and he tapped into some urban renewal money.
But if somebody had on the subject of waivers for system development for SDCs, if there were like commercial properties or retail properties that could be changed to have housing as part of that, expanded upwards or
mixed use.
or whatever.
Yeah, mixed use. Yeah, some of the cities do
for sure.
Have a mixed use element to that too.
Well, I saw here in Newburgh that they actually have one for wage family jobs. Like there's a provision in their code to provide waivers for businesses coming that are going to supply jobs. So it appears to me that this can be used in a community to drive the need of the community in many different ways, which I think is a very important piece, especially as we hear that it's cost prohibitive to develop in our area or build housing in our area that's affordable. I suppose that could even cross to this if a new business was going to come into town, but it was going to cost them too much or an exorbitant amount to be able to build their facility, it might drive them away to a different community.
The other part of this is just the code in itself, the way our workforce housing code's written. It is discouraging sometimes. I mean, we had a developer that wanted to develop up on Lundin Road, I should say, that sort of turned away from the idea of multifamily housing because the SDCs were too high. They weren't interested in the programs that we have in our code. They weren't interested in being tied to something that they'd have to, be regulated on, like rent control. So that's another side of this is there's not a lot of developers, not a lot. I'm not going to say local developers that's willing to do that. They want to build for a profit, and that's why that development has changed significantly in its design. So.
I mean, it is their livelihood. They
sure.
They have to be able to make a profit. Yeah.
So again, I just want to I encourage you to really look at chapter 17.180 on workforce housing. Again, it really highlights in there all the parameters on what we currently have established for how you qualify for any of the SDC SDC deferral and financing options.
What was the chapter?
Chapter 17.180. It's in the Land Development Code, and it's the last section under workforce housing. So there's several sections in there.
You look like you had some more comments. Hank.
Well, no, I just want to kind of reiterate what he had said about rent control. I can tell you, being in real estate and construction for 25 years, that's a very scary word. And it has turned off, and it will continue to turn off a lot of investors who want to bring in housing. But I do also understand the need of making sure that this is actually helping the community. And I think, and I know there's a lot more smarter people than I am out there, but supply and demand.
Are you referring to the state rent controls or something in our code?
Well, just in general, just the word rent control will make a developer just stop and go, no, I don't want any part of that. Just simply because it's already, the state already is pretty unfriendly to landlords. It's gotten a little bit better, but just in general, the state has never, the ordinance not been a great landlord state. So it has discouraged even some developers just because of what the state is already doing. But when you start saying that, hey, we'll give you an SDC credit, but you're going to have some kind of control or rent control, the developer's just going to say it's not worth it.
Seems like some of these maybe did a certain percentage of them need to be done that way. Would that be something that would be more palatable?
I think it would be. The state has adopted certain programs. I know in other areas I've seen this, Medford just blow up. It was a deferred property taxes for like 10 years. Not a huge fan, just because then that doesn't really benefit the area as much as it could. But I've seen just in general in other areas where by encouraging building and you brought in more supply, it kind of leveled out the demand where rents were forced to come down just simply because of competition. I would feel that would be a lot better approach if you can get enough builder building that and creating the housing that the supply is just going to level out the demand and prices will just automatically kind of come down. But again, it's just my humble opinion.
So Tony and Tim, is this something that, is it fairly simple for you to come to the council and say, here's a proposal of changing the code and offering these incentives? Or is this something that's extremely complicated to change?
I'll tell you, in 2020 and 2021, we made a revision to the accessory dwelling unit code requirements, which is in this very same section under workforce housing. If you wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit on your property, you actually had to rent that through our affordable housing terms. We felt that was at the time, we weren't getting anybody interested in building ADUs. We still haven't had anybody interested in building ADUs, maybe because still an ADU will still cost $16,000 to build when you want to just build this little tiny building of 16 grand right up front. So that's one aspect. So what we did is we said, okay, well, let's see if we can encourage more ADUs. Let's eliminate the affordable housing portion requirement from accessory dwelling units. So that's one thing we've done. It hasn't been anything encouraging, but I don't think a lot of people have a lot of room in their backyard to build ADUs, as property is available right now that is available for multifamily housing. But what's discouraging them is the cost, and what we see in our department is the cost of SDCs. And I'm not talking, 4 units isn't really a huge, it's a huge impact to him, but when we're talking about 36, 60 units, it's a lot of money. We're talking almost $250,000 or $750,000 just in SDC fees. So this is what I'm saying. What I'm trying to do here, and what we're trying to do, is just get something going, encourage some kind of multifamily housing, and I would say minimum 4 units. And you can max it out if you want, but just start at 4 units. Say this is it. How much you're going to get? If you want to budget it every year, if it's $100,000, you want to divvy out to whoever first come, first serve. If the criteria you want to set, say if you're building 4 units, you're going to get a 25% discount. 12 units, you're going to get a 35% discount. This is the direction we're looking for. We want to develop a policy for you guys to feel comfortable with.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'd say that's mostly what we were looking for direction in, is put together some sort of policy that's not overbearing, overreaching, and simple for our builders to utilize out there, our developers to utilize out there. But as Tony has reiterated time and time again, when I came in last July, it was almost impossible for me to find. There were no apartments really available, and I had to get in a network of a network of a network just to find somebody that might rent me their house. But I think, to answer your question, Councilor Martin, I think what we're looking to is put together some sort of policy that we can utilize. But I think, as Tony has hit upon, if we could put maybe forth these efforts toward the beginning on multifamily to start off with, I think that would be a good place to start. And whether we want to put a cap on it, or council wants to put a cap on it, I think that'd be helpful too. But just to encourage that, because I do think once you do that, it does. Because as Tony had mentioned before, if I'm just throwing an example, Tony and his wife decide to, downsize and they want to go live in an apartment or a condo or something, then that's going to, if there was something available for him to live in, then his house is going to come up, and then another young couple who's maybe both financially on their feet now can afford to buy Tony's house, and somebody else can buy their house. So there is a trickle-down effect to, the market there, but that's kind of where we're looking to start.
Well, I think, we're starting the budget process, and we can justify this to the people in our community that we're moving money around, or we're not collecting this fee anymore, or we have to collect it somewhere else. But people in the community that don't want to spend 45 minutes standing in line at the pharmacy anymore because there's not enough people to work there, or how they're impacted by the shortage of workforce housing. They may not be in the housing market, but they see it every day that our community lacks that. So here's, this is a way that the city can try to take action to alleviate part of that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe the thought is there may be other ways that we could add to additional options, but right now wanting to start with the multi-housing, and it's my understanding that if you're going to build 1 or 60, the price per is the same, correct?
Yeah,
So if it's a multi-housing and you have 60 apartments,
Just say a duplex.
it's going to be the same fee for 1 as for 60.
Well, let's just say with duplex, you're going to get the full boat on one side and the reduced price for the second unit. And then
That's an example.
every additional unit on top of that, it's the same reduced price.
The same exact price.
Right.
And so it sounded to me like.
Which we have that established now. We don't have to change the density bonus, but what we're looking for is just to add an additional incentive, which is to say, we're going to waive X dollar amount, continue on with everything else you've done. We're just going to give the waiver. And you can do that up until you can change it. I mean, we can add more restrictions to it if we think this is something that needs to be more regulated, I guess I would say. I'm on the fence about the affordable housing aspect of it because I still feel like that's a discouraging element. And I don't want to turn somebody away who's willing to come into our community and build 6 units. And I can only hope that they would put the rents at a reasonable rate. But again, the cost of construction in this town is super high, so.
We could have an area, a map of where the neighborhoods where this is allowed.
An overlay zone is
So
what
it's
you're talking
not an
about?
area where, okay, it's going to be a high-end condos versus, somebody's not going to retire to live across the street from that.
This is an individual, I think this is, like I say, the criteria can be individualized. I mean, you as a council can make that decision.
Especially if there's other communities close by that have programs like this. We're competing for builders to come here. If they're deciding it's cheaper to go over there, we have to compete too.
I think you will find, though, that most other communities that are doing this do have an affordability affordable housing aspect to the way they divvy the money out. So I don't think we're going to get away from that. Now, in our code, I think that talks about a percentage of the units have to meet that criteria. And like I say, again, we could look at this, make a revision specifically to our workforce housing code, tailor it to how you guys want to see this move forward. Again, remember, our goal is to encourage it, not discourage it. And right now, I feel like our code, is the way it's written, is discouraging it.
Yeah, because
so that's the clear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we are, and unfortunately.
Well, because the way I look at deferral or financing, they're still paying the full tilt there.
It's just on the,
it's going to pay me
instead of the front end.
Yeah, it just helps them out when their costs are pretty substantial
Right.
building the units. But having some sort of, like Tony had mentioned, some sort of tiered system or some sort of, really nice incentive out there for several units would be great as well. So,
Can I ask, are the hard costs, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this properly. The hard cost to the system, to the infrastructure system for one, is it, if you have multi-housing, is it really that much more for each and every apartment added to that?
That's a super
Or
good,
should it be like a sliding scale of?
yeah, that's a really good question, and it's I don't think the way the law is written in the state actually helps us answer that question. I think SDCs, when you charge them, you have to charge them equally across the board to everyone. And whatever, we've already established a methodology. We've adopted our methodology, which really hasn't changed much from our last methodology. So we really have to adhere to that. And remember, again, I remind you, we are not collecting the money. We're just moving the money from one account to another and really passing that value off to the developer. It's a great question, and it's hard to answer. I thought going through the SDC process that we just
Would
recently
help
did
that.
would have answered that question. But what I got from him is SDCs have to be, per state law, SDCs have to be applied and charged the same for everyone.
So what I'm hearing from you is that we need some lobbying at the state level to
Sure.
address this
That'd be nice.
specific issue, because it just seems to me that cost is not equivalent. It can't possibly cost that number, that same amount. We're not adding that many more lines underground.
Well, so remember that it's based on the capital improvement plan. So our costs are actual. So when we're talking about or future projects to upgrade, we look at our stormwater master plan, our wastewater master plan, our transportation system plan. You look at all of those projects, and those capital improvement plans are what drove the methodology and how much we were going to charge. So they're very tied together. So those are actual costs that we have coming up in the future. And of course, they take into account, index, increases in cost over 10 years, whatever it is. So they are actual costs, and they need to be charged from somebody. Somebody has to pay them, and that's why we have this system development methodology, is to make sure that they're applied across the board equally.
Fairly. And I mean, the reality is a general fund can't absorb this. The property tax revenue cannot possibly cover these infrastructure costs. So we've got to have some mechanism to do that.
Yeah, and it could be what we do have available to do this. It could be a great investment, and it could encourage and potentially increase our general fund over time with property taxes. And so there could potentially be it may take a while, but at least it's something, and better than nothing, which we have now. Well, I would take that back. We've got Jamie's project. We've got the other side of Lucky Lane coming up. We've got Lundeen Road coming up. We have Lone Ranch. I mean, there's a lot of multifamily property out there. So that's going to be on the books as well.
But to answer your question, Mayor, there are studies that show that multifamily housing does significantly reduce the burden on the infrastructure itself. Yeah. So it does.
You would think intuitively it would.
I mean, I think that's a big part of the equation of how we can better utilize our actual infrastructure dollars also. Sure. And it's a need, and we know it. So I think we owe it to the community members to do what we can to try to help the process along and provide.
Take a look at the last council agenda report we did for the adoption of the methodology, and it actually the breakdown of how we apply those fees per each category, per each column, or silo, I call it, water, stormwater, sewer, parks, transportation. It breaks it down, and you can see as you get the density bonus how some of the others drop off, but we still maintain, you don't really get much of a break on sewer or water, because those are very expensive infrastructure projects. So you're not going to see a ton of break in that density bonus there. So some cities have completely eliminated parks and streets and to give the waiver. They've just said, okay, you pay all this on this one, and the waiver includes basically not paying those. And we could do that too. I think roundabout ways, most of the communities are doing everything pretty much by state law. It's just a matter of how council wants to present it and encourage this type of housing. So.
Well, we can definitely come back with some proposals as far as policy goes, and like I say, what's successful in some of these other communities that might be very successful here that are in the same boat for workforce housing, because it's tough. I was recently had somebody that came into my life that needed an apartment and was having a heck of a time finding something, and they ended up getting a little tiny ADU studio apartment, and were paying $1,400 a month, and they weren't making big bucks, so pretty much about 85% of their income was going toward just paying the rent itself, so which doesn't leave a whole lot, and anyway, but I think we could definitely come and as council Councilmember Martin had suggested, with the budget and everything else, we can work with our finance director and come up with some creative ways of doing this.
I appreciated hearing how it's impacted Eugene. I am curious in other communities if they're seeing their strategies actually bear fruit, and if it is encouraging what they've looked for. I think that's just helpful data to know for sure. But I'm really disappointed Councilor Malmberg isn't here. I know this has been a huge thing on his list, so I hope that he's able to get caught up on the discussion and hopefully pose some questions to come.
Well, we'll make sure. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there's any other data that says these communities are expanding these programs or retracting them, which is a indication of success or failure.
That's a good point.
I would love to pass on whatever information I have from the communities that I've worked with.
Absolutely.
It's the county commissioner at Klamath, as well as the city managers there in Klamath as well. We've been doing this for a bit. And just to get whatever information about them.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for coming and giving us a real perspective from somebody involved.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Is there any more discussion on that, or should we move on to future workshop topics? Did you want to bring up the discussion about the facade program?
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate here, but I've read all of our plans yet. I haven't got through them all yet, but no, my favorite is the facade improvement plan and the urban renewal plan.
Yeah.
How do business owners know about these? How do they apply for reimbursement? What are the constraints? What I haven't seen is how is the plan executed? And what are the constraints around it? If somebody wants to tear down their building and rebuild it, I'm sure the city's not paying 100%. What are the constraints?
Yeah.
And then how do they get money back?
Well, Tony and myself can definitely get you the information on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Please send me all you got. I think there's, in my short-term view of this, I think there's real opportunities there.
I think also you can talk to Pacific Sushi, Darren Farmer, the movie theater, some recent people that have completed it, and ask them what their thoughts on it are.
It sounds like the bakery too. Utilize that.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, and I don't know how I'd find out who recently utilized those programs.
Yeah. Laura.
Okay.
Yeah. Lori Ziemer. She's only here for another 5 months, but she's got a lot, as well as Tony, information on that. So.
Okay. Wonderful.
Councilor Martin, do you have anything?
Can't think of any future topics.
Councilman Malmberg did mention to me a week or so ago that he would like to see us revisit the strategic plan and wrapping that up, because we were pretty close to getting that done as well. I told him probably one of the workshops next month, we could probably wrap that up.
Just in time for new council.
That's right.
And then, and this might be in all the information I read, so I apologize if it's buried in there. The purpose of the workshop then is to work through partial ideas. Is that an accurate statement?
It's to share information.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of decisions being made,
Right.
Formal decisions. And so what we like to do is bring things that are at the forefront for the council. Then that way, like I said, we just went through, an hour and a half or so of two topics. We kind of got some direction. Now we're going to go, and then we're going to bring it back, and then council passes it, gets implemented, and moves on. That's kind of how the wheels turn with that.
And you might even have multiple workshops on a single topic to.
That happened to,
plan.
well, like the Rainbow Rock, it was
sounds like that's been talked about.
7 workshops, 7 or 8 workshops, I believe, is how many we had on that one. So yeah, it got.
Okay.
It's kind of the planning and processing and discussion but no voting.
But no voting.
You can kind of hear a consensus, but
Right.
no voting. Yeah.
Future big agenda items, to work them out, so it's a lot more simpler during the meeting where the decision's made.
And it's also to keep any surprises from the council too, because we don't want to just bring you a contract or bring you a potential program for, workforce housing exemptions. You're like, wait a second, we never talked about this. And,
Right.
and because we would be here till midnight trying to explain everything to you, so you've already set it in place. So.
Okay.
And by the way, just for the council and the public's information, we did have a couple citizens, and I think we visited with the mayor briefly about this. We're going to start putting our workshops, video and audio, out for the public consumption now, so they can, see the slides and things, because we had a couple people call and we're complaining a bit that we hear what you're saying, but we can't see what you're doing. So, but I think this will be very helpful for that. And so, but great suggestions on making sure that these folks have access to that as well. So.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll